Hello, distinguished participants. This is AK Mittal, the moderator of this session on 5G deployment. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, as the case may be, depending on where, in which part of the world you are uh, tuned to this program. Today, this panel discussion is on a very important topic of how to make strategies for 5G deployment ready. And we know that 5G is finally here. We have 5G deployments happening in various parts of the world. Uh, and there are parts of the world where 4G is already there. There are parts of the world where 4G is still to mature or not at all there. So there are different kinds of markets, and 5G is already here. And so it's very important for operators to devise strategies for different territories. And then there are various other options and variety of things which are to go into the strategy formulation stage. For example, the 5G standard provides for a non-standalone mode, which is called NSA mode, and SA mode, standalone NR deployment. Hence, the question needs to be addressed by the operators in which mode it is better to start in a given territory. And as we know, 5G offers bandwidths much larger than 4G. And so demand on the backhaul increases many folds. So choices have to be made between microwave and OFC-based backhaul or a combination thereof. And for efficient use of spectrum, especially in millimeter wave case, IAB or integrated access and backhaul is also a deployment option. Then, as you know, the 5G, the core features, they revolve around enhanced mobile broadband, ultra reliable low latency communication, and massive machine type communication. These are the main three capabilities around which 5G is built. Of course, there are many other things. And one of the prime and distinguishing feature of 5G is network slicing, which enables provision of customized services and which also enables further to serve different verticals meeting their requirements. And those verticals are, for example, healthcare, agriculture, industrial automation, automotives or connected vehicles, or maybe utilities like power transmission corporations and others, robotics, drone communication, and the list is big, and it will keep on growing. And they deploy a varying degree of these features of EMBB, URLCC, and MMTC configured in the slice for giving the customized services as per the requirement. So apart from providing higher bandwidth users, the operators have to find a business case for different kind of verticals when they deploy the 5G network. And for making 5G deployment reality soon, so apart from the operators who are to make the final decisions, the role of government, regulators, local bodies, equipment vendors, infrastructure providers, to count a few, is very important. For example, government must provide policy framework and sufficient spectrum. Local bodies must enable easy access to right of way, specifically the roadside furniture, infra providers for making available towers, and fiber cloud equipment vendors for supplying standards-based equipment. So I will not take much time on this part because we have a distinguished panel of speakers here, and I will request them to introduce themselves. So first, Dr. Kumar, please introduce himself, and after that, Dr. Kiran Kuchi.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. I am Kumar Shivarajan. I am Chief Technology Officer at Tejas Networks. Tejas Networks is one of the leading providers of telecommunication equipment, and we are based in Bangalore. I was also the former chairperson of TSDSI, which is India's telecom SDO.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Now, may I request Dr. Kiran Kuchi to introduce himself briefly?
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. My name is Kiran Kuchi. I am a faculty with the Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT Hyderabad. I'm also founder of Wisig Networks, a 5G startup that builds 5G radio solutions, especially in the space of DU, ORAN compliant DU solutions that we have been developing. I am associated with 3GPP and TSDSI in various capacities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kuchi. Now may I request Mr. Parag Naik to introduce himself.
Hey, Mr. Mittal, I am the co-founder and CEO at Sankhya Labs. We are India's first fabless semiconductor company. We work in building L1 chipsets for 4G, 5G, and a whole lot of other applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Naik. May I now request Mr. Umang Jindal to introduce himself?
Hello, everyone. This is Umang Jindal. I am part from Ericsson team. I take care of the entire software development and the functionalities on the 4G and 5G front. So I had the whole software development for the different markets area, right from India to Australia. Been driving a lot of business needs and the operator requirements for 4G and 5G.
Thank you, Mr. Jindal. And I briefly introduce myself. I am A.K. Mittal. I have worked in government for almost 36 years in different areas of technology, starting from microwave, satellite communications, fiber, and I headed the standardization unit of government, which is called Telecom Engineering Center. Currently, I am advisor with TSDSI, the Telecom Standards Development Society of India, the standards body of India. So I will now you see that we have a very distinguished set of panelists from every field except the government. And I think they will be able to throw a lot of insight into what goes into the planning of a 5G deployment. So my first question would be a general question. Any panelist can pick up. Let me put up my question. So my question is that what are the driving factors for going for a 5G deployment for an operator? So I think if we start from an operator, we don't have Sandeep here. So from that side, if anybody from the panelists can pick up this question, that what are the driving factors, whether the coverage and capacity as usual for a mobile network or something more?
So maybe I can take the question to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mittal, it's a valid point on terms of talking about the driving factors. So you talked about the use cases. So eMBB is one use case, which is basically connected to the masses. And looking at the population that we have in India with the amount of people, we see eMBB as one big application that would pick up, followed by FWA, because when we look at India, we don't see huge amount of fiberization. So a lot of urban cities in India, and FWA seems to be another big application to start with. And then we third phase of a lot of applications coming in the area of industrialization, where we see latency-based applications by MMTC and URLC coming into it. So MMTC would be more about connecting devices, connecting cars, connecting different industries, different instruments onto the system, maybe the security system also, like you said when we started the session. And then comes the major about the applications on URLC, where we look at a lot of things around. Can we bring automation, animation to the industries in terms of control functions? But I think the key factors to drive all these would be the spectrum part, affordable spectrum for the operators and the networks. And when I say spectrum, we're talking about spectrum not only in mid-band, which is the 5G major spectrum in terms of capacity, but then we're also talking about the coverage spectrum in low band. So affordable spectrum in low band and mid-band for coverage and capacities, another thing. And then the last part is on the millimeter. If we are talking about more deployments on 5G and there are dense networks, then we look at millimeter wave as a solution for FWA, hotspot, and the key areas to be covered. Over to you.
Yeah, Dr. Kumar, you raise your hand.
Yeah, so I think what Mr. Umang said is what we all expect, right? More broadband, more enhanced mobile broadband. It'll be really interesting to see if there are any true URLLC and MMTC applications that come up in scale. I think that's what we're eagerly waiting for. Otherwise, 5G is more of 4G. eMBB and FWA are important applications. I think FWA, both for, especially for India. but it would be really nice to see if there are really truly new applications which can only be done with 5G, and that would be in the space of URLLC and MMTC. I think we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we don't see anything. It's not clear what is the killer application yet.
Yes, Dr. Suchi.
So I think we have to understand that what standards offer and what is being deployed and what is used, there is always a gap. Standards give you something, far more than what you can, consume. 5G is more of a 4G with wider bandwidth. That's something we have to understand. And if you don't plan to deploy URLLC and all these far-looking use cases, 5G is truly 4G with wider bandwidth in the sub-6 gigahertz space. That is not, you shouldn't differentiate too much other than having a higher bandwidth. The other ability 5G provides is millimeter wave, which 4G doesn't. So if you are not planning to do millimeter wave and ultra low latency in the near term, what 5G is essentially a wider bandwidth 4G plus narrowband IoT or category M1 that serves massive IoT needs, which is already available. Narrowband IoT is available today, and category M1 is available today. In fact, those are the only two specifications that address so-called massive MTC. There's nothing else. So mobile broadband is supposedly the so-called killer application. That is, we increase the capacity, improve the video quality, add more users, and plus some narrowband IoT use cases still emerging. That's how we see for India, at least my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah. So any other panelists taking this question? Yeah, Mr. Parag Naik.
Yeah, I have, there are two views to this. This is the inside out view and the outside in view. If you look at the outside in view from an application standpoint, then 5G is actually, like Kiran said, 4G++. And like Kumar said, we still have to look at applications, right? 4G, the killer application to me, from my point of view, was things like Uber. Uber really drove the push of 4G in a lot of countries. As we build out, probably we'll come up with a killer use cases for 5G as well. Now coming out to the inside out view, I believe the major differentiation in 5G is going to be the coming of a new ecosystem based around Open RAN, and that I believe is going to be a game changer for all of us, right? And how 5G networks will be deployed. So from an operator perspective, things like virtualization of the network, virtualization of the infrastructure, virtualization of the RAN itself is going to be a key component of the 5G deployment. That's the inside out view.
So thank you, panelists. I think we got different sides of view of on this particular question. Now, the another part, which is a use case, could be called a use case or an additional thing which is coming out, is the emergence of private networks. So how important it will be for the operators to cater to the requirement of private networks? Or do you expect that the private networks will be outside the operator's domain, they will like to run their own? Yeah, Dr. Kumar.
I think we all use our mobile phones in our offices, right? We don't necessarily use the office Wi-Fi or anything. So I think using LTE technology today, 5G technology tomorrow in the office, campus environment is important because it provides it's a better technology than Wi-Fi. And if it can be adapted to take care of privacy requirements and keeping data inside the premise and so on, I think it will be widely used. You test upon the other aspect, will it be done by operators or by enterprises themselves? That depends on the spectrum availability. I think India can look at allotting spectrum for private LTE use within a campus rather than saying we'll only allot spectrum to operators. I think that can push up, and I think there is a good use case for private LTE and private 5G, this is the 5G context. For private 5G, if the spectrum can be made available, I think there is appetite to build private LTE networks. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Jindal.
To add on from where Mr. Kumar left, I think it's a really good point that if we can, if the regulators can work on a model where the new spectrum can be made available for the private networks, or we can talk about slicing in the existing spectrum to the existing networks. So those could be the two things that we can look into it. But the moment we talk about enterprise or private network or the new application base, I think the big ticket item which comes on top of it is that how do we work on the net neutrality part? How flexibly the operators can do it? Because we can talk about slicing today also, but is the policies conducive for the operators to do the net neutrality part? No. The answer is still there are a lot of discussions going on. So that could be one thing which we can jointly work on to it, so that different slices can be created on the existing spectrum, on the existing networks, so that we can talk about reusing the existing infrastructures in terms of equipment, in terms of towers, in terms of spectrum, and then there could be some business models around that. So that's my view.
My is a brief question on this, what you said, Mr. Jindal, is that network slicing is again a solution which is vendor dependent. That means vendors provide the service whether through a slice or otherwise into the private domains by making them as a vertical. But now the question of net neutrality within the network of an operator, net neutrality, to my understanding, is a question which applies to providing bandwidth on internet. But running on a network on IP and providing end-to-end services, does really net neutrality come into picture?
To some extent, yes. When we start to define QoS and other policy frameworks, so then the flavor comes in, and that's where we need to be, I would say, hand-holding the regulators, the operators, and the vendors all together into it.
Yeah, I think I'm just quote unquote is that there may be a regulatory misconception about IP networks being treated as internet and then applying net neutrality principles on that. Appears so, because when this was happening in DOT a few years back, net neutrality after FCC initial regulations, there was a conception that even IP networks are internet networks and neutrality should apply. While we were doing on ISDN different class of services long back, much before internet came in. Okay, so we will not dwell more into this subject. Yeah, Mr. Nayak had to say something about it.
Well, actually, it follows on to the first question. I believe private network is one of the use cases for 5G. If you really look at it, the integration of 5G Wi-Fi seamlessly into a single network probably would be one of the use cases, if you can call it that way. But it can be looked at it from an inside-out perspective, like I said earlier. And today, enterprise Wi-Fi networks are deployed by a whole lot of different vendors than the regular cellular operators. But I believe that again, there's this new ecosystem of the system integrators, new bunch of players would actually roll out private networks much more efficiently than probably an operator-driven model, at least in certain geographies. And then that also is very geography specific. In some countries where there is, like the US, where there is CBRS, and I think in Germany probably they have allotted very lightly licensed regulations for 5G private networks within a certain area. There, I think the enterprises themselves will roll it out. But I think in other geographies, again, depending on the technical feasibility and the regulations, it's going to be a combination of operators and system integrators.
Thank you. Now, next important question to be considered by the operators is about deployment in a NSA mode or SA mode. So what are the views here that how the decision should be made by the operators on this? Yes, Dr. Kumar, please go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's fairly clear. If you already are an LTE operator, you have a brownfield deployment of 5G, you don't want to replace your EPC with a brand new one. You want to just sweat it and just add 5G. So you will go for NSA mode. I think that's what majority of operators will do, because if you need money to buy the new spectrum, and you'll probably be an LTE operator and you want to reuse the LTE infrastructure, particularly the EPC, and so you will go for NSA mode. If there is a greenfield operator, a new geo, like Geo was greenfield in 4G, then they can probably consider SA, but I see that as an exception. That's all.
I agree with Kumar on that part. In fact, both I think to an extent, I think Dish Wireless. I don't know if Rakuten would really be an SA because they're doing a 4G and a 5G. I'm not sure, but Dish Wireless for sure in the US is operating in a standalone mode, and that's because it's mostly greenfield, like Kumar said. I think all brownfield deployments would continue to be NSA, but then again, it depends on it depends on the cost perspective. If everybody is going to rip apart their existing infrastructure and go the O-RAN way, then probably you could have a different scenario altogether.
Right. Yeah. You want to say something?
You asked me to speak?
Yeah, I think I thought you were raising your hand.
Yeah. So, this NSA versus SA, it always baffles me. When you want to deploy millimeter wave, it's very well understood that millimeter wave will not have enough coverage. So they always needed a 4G fallback. So the only way you could do millimeter wave was to start a connection through 4G. The control goes through 4G network and you switch to millimeter wave wherever there is coverage and fall back. But if you don't do millimeter wave and if you want to do sub-6, well, obviously, like the previous speakers pointed out, you don't want to disrupt your network elements, do NSA. But if you really want to do that, always there is a fundamental premise that there has got to be a 4G coverage in order to make 5G operational. That's also a constraint. So there could also be a scenario where you do 5G SA only, but I guess that will be situations where there is no 4G or in certain geographical areas or it's a greenfield operator. Thank you.
And I think the dilemma may also arise when the 4G deployment has just started or it's not mature market and 5G has come in and you want to do 5G also. Then probably you have to make a call, a mixed hybrid network. Somewhere it's NSA and uncovered areas SA, something like that.
Yeah, you might see a mix of NSA and SA also. I mean, let's not overrule that. That's also a good possibility for a given operator.
Yeah, Mr. Jindal, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'll just add something. We initially talked about the use case for India for 5G. I think the primarily use case that comes out is eMBB as a major, I would say, revenue churner as well as a demand from the subscribers. So NSA can be a very good option to start with, but if the 4G networks are really loaded for the operator, then maybe they'll have to look at the strategy to bring SA immediately. So depending upon their 4G networks, the decisions will happen. And second thing, based on the application and the use case they want to do. And talking about what's happening around globally, there is now a need coming in from different operators to roll out NSA and SA both simultaneously. And then they're looking at how do we move the traffic between SA, NSA and 4G. How do we do the handovers of the call? How do we work on the overall scheme so that the users don't get penalized because of different network scenarios? So net, what we feel is that both the mods are good. They would be deployed, but then it again depends upon how their current 4G networks are in terms of loading and what sort of investment they want to make. So these are the 2 points I want to bring.
Now, how do we see O-RAN as an opportunity and then a challenge in the short term for using it as a part of the network? Yeah, Dr. Kumar, please.
So I think first 3GPP needs competition. So O-RAN is good. So we have an alternative to 3GPP. So I think medium to long term, O-RAN will be successful because it potentially brings in a lot of efficiency. But at this point, I think the compute power needed and all that needs to be verified whether it can support. But today the same capacities as the 3GPP technology. But certainly for even the medium term, I think O-RAN is a good option.
Yeah, Mr. Parag.
Yes. No, I think I said it depends on which side of the divide you are in. You either look at O-RAN as a threat or O-RAN as a big opportunity. Right? For companies such as ours, and Kiran will testify to that, is the fact that O-RAN gives us an opportunity, gives us a tailwind to get into sockets and operators where we couldn't earlier. So that way, O-RAN to me is going to be a game changer, especially from also network automation perspective, right? So today, network automation, especially in 5G, is going to be a big challenge, given the number of knobs that are going to be there, and opening up of interfaces, allowing whole bunch of new operators, whole bunch of new vendors to come in and build network automation applications is going to be a game changer. Initially, like any other new technology, it would have teething problems. In fact, we are right now deploying an O-RAN based solution with a 5G operator in the US. So there could be challenges, but I think in the long run we'll overcome all of them.
Yes, please, Dr. Kochi.
Yeah, thank you, Mittalji. So I think the impact of O-RAN might be something to consider in the Indian context, especially it could be an accelerator to develop indigenous technology. This is I have a strong feeling that it's not so much about what O-RAN gives you in terms of becoming a truly cloud RAN operation, like aggregating many cell sites into one cloud and running a radio cloud. That's not gaining much traction. Okay, so finally, what has ended up being is that O-RAN is yet another RAN with functional splits. Okay, now in the context of India, putting together a radio head end, a baseband, core network, all of them together by a single entity could be a tall order, especially if you are just coming up. Some people can do it, some people find it difficult. But what I foresee is that those who excel in radio unit, they will make it O-RAN compliant. Those who excel in DU, they will make a good job building a DU, and those who excel in CU, they will build a CU and a core network. So this could really be an opportunity for smaller entities. And we already see that a lot of momentum in India, O-RAN compliant based products. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll add something. I like the discussion on O-RAN. Ericsson started taking this journey on O-RAN a bit late, but we were on track. And today we contribute maximum onto the O-RAN forum. So when we look at O-RAN, we look at three different pillars of the O-RAN, I would say. The first one is on the cloudification piece, which I think Dr. Kiran and Parag talked about, so I'll not touch onto it. Second thing is about opening the interfaces among different, I would say, vendors, opening the interfaces between CU, DU, as well as between the radio. And the third part, which is really important, which we see is a real escalator for the O-RAN piece, is the orchestration and automation. And I think Parag also touched onto it, and Dr. Kiran also touched. That's the area where we see a lot of improvements, enhancements coming up for the operators and the networks, especially for India. The reason I say so is because that's the area where we can bring a lot of Indian tailored discussions in terms of what sort of performances the operators are looking at. How can we talk about the network layer managements? How can we talk about automations? How can we talk about improvements? Because the cloudification piece, to some extent, is restricted because of the fiber penetration that we have in our country. So we have yet to take a place where we can increase our fiber penetration from whatever levels we are in different operators to a higher level. And then talking about the open interfaces, I think it's not a one-way journey. It's a journey of opening interfaces between different technologies, different vendors, different scenarios. So that would still take a lot of time to really evolve and develop. So the third piece is where I see the real focus happening during future years of 2 or 3 years time frame.
So I think it's a very interesting discussion on O-RAN, and different point of views, I think, will enlighten our distinguished audience also on this and enlighten more interest in this subject. So now from the network, we shift to the frequencies. Now we have in 5G standard frequency range 1, sub-6 gigahertz, and frequency range 2, mostly millimeter waves. So we heard part of this discussion on the deployment strategies for NR, SA and NSA mode. But when we come to real frequencies, so what do we foresee in general? Of course, when you see the standard in 3GPP, there are a large set of frequencies slots which have been provided for use in 3GPP, which are workable. But actual availability-wise, what we see, especially in the case of India, which frequency bands are expected to be useful or targeted for FR1 and FR2? So, yeah, who would like to take this question first? Yeah, Dr. Kumar, please.
Yeah, so I wish Sandeep was here to take this question because he was most qualified and he could have talked to us about what Airtel wanted to do. But in his absence, I would have to take a guess because I'm not an operator. I think the existing frequencies, N40 and 41, 2.3, 2.6 gigahertz, is where we may see some 5G deployment. I don't know if there is, because there will be some pressure to deploy 5G, and I think existing bands may be used first just to get the foot in the door and say you have 5G. And then it will be followed by N77, 78, the 3.5 gigahertz, because that will get auctioned. But I think 5G may start even before the auction because phones are there, spectrum is there, you can reuse it, refarm it, whatever, do spectrum sharing. FR2 is more difficult. The technology itself is difficult, but we also have issues of coexistence with ISRO and satellite and so on. So I think it will be some time before the FR2 issues are sorted out worldwide and especially in India because of the spectrum not being available readily for auctioning. So that's all.
Okay, Mr. Jindal, yeah, please.
Okay, I'll try and answer it. We discuss regularly with Sandeep on the different bands that we want to talk about and the networks and the planning. So first thing is, we see today the government is talking about FR1 only. Like Dr. Kumar rightly said, the FR2 is still not in discussion. So the first thing which we have been discussing a lot is that when we talk about 5G spectrum, so FR1 and FR2 should be brought at the same time. The low, mid, and the high band should be brought at the same time. This enables the networks, the operators, I would say the transport, everything to be dimensioned immediately at the right time. Otherwise, it goes into bits and pieces, and that adds to a lot of time, delay, and cost. So where we feel FR1 and FR2 both can play a role is the enterprise, the FWA application, because FWA is one thing which India needs. And COVID has really taught the Indian people and the general public is that we all need a lot of connectivity at the residence. So if I look at Class B and Class B C cities in India, they are still waiting for the investments to come in fiber or some other alternate to get connectivity at the homes. So that's where we see FR2 will play a major role. And there are networks getting deployed around the world with FR2, especially on the FWA application side. And now coming back to FR1, where do we see any 5G deployments happening in India in the existing bands till 2.3 and 2.6? The answer is very, very low because the current spectrum that operators have is really utilized in a big way in terms of loading. So just switching on 5G on those carriers would make the services of 4G also bad. And in fact, we will only have a 5G logo for the UEs. So if you really want to bring 5G, then we need to get more spectrum into the network. And that's where we're expecting the spectrum auction to bring more value to the operators. If the operator are able to get right amount of spectrum for their running their 4G as well as adding the 5G layers, I think then it makes sense to go roll out in FR1. Otherwise, what we see is that the 3.5 gigahertz auction will be the start of 5G deployments.
So we come to the next question if there are no further comments. Okay. So now from the network, core wireless network, we move to the front hauls and back hauls. So as we know, the bandwidth requirement for the backhaul is very, very high. So how do we see the deployment of optical fiber technologies like GPON or NGPON or any other technologies in the backhaul? How much they are essential and what is the scenario which is emerging? Yeah, Dr. Kumar.
So thank you. I feel I should take the optical fiber question first. Okay. So we see that wireless doesn't work very well unless you have good backhaul. That's how we make our living. So I think for 5G to work well, it must have fiber-based backhaul. Getting your conventional fiber technologies to every 5G base station, I think, is going to be a challenge. If you want protected rings and IP and so on. So we see that GPON or XGS-PON, which is the version of NGPON that's likely to get deployed, symmetric 10G-PON, will be deployed or already is getting deployed in residential areas and all that, where 5G is small cells will come up. So I feel that from that point of view, NGPON is a good technology to do backhaul of 5G, especially for small cells. And I think that's going to be popular. And in India, we also have GPON all over the rural place. So if you're doing 5G for coverage in urban areas and rural broadband, FWA, then GPON is available in both places and has been actually extended quite a bit in 2020. So I think GPON can play a good role in backhauling 5G small cells in the urban areas and FWA 5G in rural areas.
Maybe then I'll take cue from here. I think
Yeah,
he said about the small cell, because that's going to be one big thing when we look at a lot of enterprise as well as hotspot areas. What we foresee is that a lot of small cells will be deployed, and the transmission connectivity would be a big concern for that. And if PON can solve that problem, I think then it is the great thing. Otherwise, we need to start looking at E-band or some sort of a branch fiberization to that zone so that we can get some connectivity. Otherwise, the use case and the business case doesn't fly. So to really make it happen, maybe the same transport network with PON would have to be used for multiple other applications to really make the right business case.
So now we come to the question of manufacturing side. That recently you remember that in India, for the BSNL 4G tender, all the indigenous manufacturer of different components of 4G, they came together to the SI and they have bid, and implementation will happen soon, hopefully. But now looking to 5G, which is still a bit away in time frame, how is the Indian industry getting ready to provide end-to-end solutions and competition in the market, and not a SI-based solution? Any inputs on that?
See, I think India is a bit peculiar in that we have many startups, but we don't have a big company like Mr. Umang's Ericsson or Nokia or Huawei or something like that, right? So we don't have a big mothership, which can bring in all the technology and build it up here. And I think we do need competition because of, there's very limited competition in this whole infrastructure space for 4G and 5G. So I think competition is good in order to, get costs down and get efficiencies. So India has to adopt a slightly different model. So I think this SI model, which is being tried by the government and the BSNL, is a good model because it takes the strength of India, which is our big software services companies or system integration companies, and gets them to work with the smaller companies who can provide the technology. So I think even in 5G, as in 4G, I think India has to leverage its strengths, which is the system integration arms of these very big technology companies, the software services companies, and the innovation and parts of the product development from smaller companies, and put them together. I think that's a new model, but I think that's probably the right model for India.
I think India or otherwise, in 5G, as O-RAN starts to get deployed, and as a lot of the telco clouds start to look like an IT cloud, I think this system integrator driven model is going to be very prevalent in the future. It needs a lot of IT background as well, right? So a mothership like Kumar talked about, and all O-RAN part, a customer should be able to catch somebody's throat, one guy's throat, right? Otherwise, what happens is you're talking to 5-10 different companies, and from an integration perspective, getting all of that together is a big challenge. So I believe the SI-driven model is going to be one of the key deployment models in the future, even for 5G.
So next question related is that what experiences or lessons we learned from current deployments in different countries this will be useful for India when we take deployment decisions?
On the experiences, I would say what we have seen from our experiences, we have rolled out more than 70 networks today in 5G. So what we come out is that let's try and first explore the bands which are there, especially on the 5G coverage. So 5G coverage is something really important that the operator should start working on. And there are multiple tools available like the spectrum sharing, the dynamic spectrum sharing, existing bands in low band. So that could be one learning that the India should adopt. Second thing is, as you do the coverage, you start to build up the capacities, and that is where they can start looking into the 3.5 gigahertz band or the 2.3 and 2.6, depending upon the spectrum availability. So as you build coverage, add on the capacities. And the third piece is you need to start planning the transport network day one, because unless you plan the transport networks, you start to not give a differentiated services between them. And the fourth thing, which is really important, is the SI piece or the services piece, where we talk about building a network slice. So the moment we talk about slicing and all these functionalities, there's a lot of development of people needs to be done to handle the IP part, to handle the QoS part. So all those things in terms of services readiness should be prepared. So these are the four things I want to bring on the table.
I have a contrary opinion on this, Sumang. Sorry. I think, India is unique, right? And 4G showed that. The kind of network that Jio rolled out has never been there in the world before, right? So I believe while we should look at other countries for inspiration, we should have our own. We have our own experiences from 4G, both from an architecture point, from a deployment point, and from a loading perspective. I think that should be factored in, into our own deployments.
I would specifically add two things where we may not be able to borrow directly from other countries. One is coverage. I think coverage in India is much more challenging. We have totally unplanned, streets, cities are mainly built out of concrete. So I think coverage issues here are going to be formidable. And in coverage in FR2, I don't think we can carry over the learning from any country. So that's the first option, first comment. Second, I think this is a very price sensitive market. Our ARPU is the lowest in the world. And so we may not want to pay, the operators may not want to pay for, like, say, some more incremental performance. So how much massive MIMO do you do? Do you do 60/40, 64R? Do you just stop at 88R? So I think we'll be very sensitive to the cost performance trade-off, especially even equipment cost versus performance. So we may not do the most aggressive, I would say, state-of-the-art solutions, simply because the cost trade-off may not be parallel, but may not be favorable. So I think in these two aspects, we have to watch before we borrow directly from other countries.
Yeah, Professor Kiran, please.
So, my views are very somewhat academic in this aspect. I never understood how a country like United States did a C-band spectrum auction now at $95 billion after deploying a 5G network. It just doesn't make much sense to me. So if you ask people on the street, if you go to FCC and ask the decision makers, if you ask them, he has your millimeter wave story, is it successful? I mean, they give you two answers. Okay. So I think United States has a lot of money. They want to be the first, among the first to deploy 5G network. And they deployed 5G where? In 4G bands, in a big chunk of operators. Apart from millimeter wave, a lot of 5G deployment by certain operators was done in 4G bands. So the coverage in those bands of 4G and 5G are similar. Capacity, I don't know. So they're not at a whole lot of gain. So in the United States itself, there is no uniformity with respect to 5G deployment. There are some companies who did higher, somewhere closer to 2.6 gigahertz, higher bandwidth. Some did millimeter wave, some did 1800 megahertz 5G. It's all over the place. So coming to India, we need to be clear about a few things. Doing 5G in existing 4G bands, I don't know whether it makes any sense. So, and we have a 5G auction coming up, 3.5 gigahertz. How do you match the coverage of 3.5 gigahertz closer to LTE coverage? That's the first problem one has to solve. You have to have a very clean answer. If you don't have a clear answer, if 5G gives you half the coverage of the 4G cell site, and if you do an NSA, what is going to happen? A quarter of your cell or half of your cell is uncovered. So there's going to be a lot of challenges. So we need to have some deeper analysis on what is good for 5G deployment, whether it is SA or NSA. How do you match the coverage at 3.5 gigahertz in a cost-effective manner to a 2.4 gigahertz LTE deployment? These are questions to be answered. Thank you.
So So if I can just respond, Kiran, I think the point is you may need 4 or 5 of these 3.5 gigahertz cells for every 2.3, and we expect you will run some fiber and put more. We all have to sell more equipment, so we can't have 3.5 match the performance of 2.3. Okay.
And just to add,
I think
Yeah,
Kiran,
because
there will
we
be
are running out of time. We have only 2 minutes left now. We are running out of time. Kindly, just please, please go ahead, Mr. Jinder.
So just to add, I think that's where the whole game of bringing a low band coverage comes in, because not all the devices would be demanding huge capacities and pipes. So that's it. Low band coverage is really important. And I think Prag rightly said, India is a different economy in terms of, there's a good guy who can come in and start rolling out a huge network. I foresee something like happening in India again in 5G. That would be a great show. I want India to become a biggest 5G network.
I really want to have a little more conversation on this. If you have to have one cell site giving you 4G and 5G, then you're going to do low band 5G and 3.5 gigahertz 5G. But are you going to give the same data rates the user throughout the cell site?
No,
is it possible? Or you have to put 3 5G cell sites in every LTE cell? I mean, these are the questions we have to ponder about.
You're right. And taking
you'd actually use 3.5 for capacity and for coverage, right? And you would only deploy it in areas where you have serious problems. So what would happen is you would not get higher speeds, but you would get more consistent quality. That's my opinion, right? But then you don't know. Yeah, better quality than 4G.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting aspect of network design and how we deliver different level of services. But now I'm getting signal from the host that our time is almost over. So even I don't have time to fully summarize all the discussion, but I can briefly say that our distinguished panelists have thrown light on different aspects very succinctly, and I think the audience would benefit, and the people who are actually going to implement these networks will have a lot more insight into the aspects of 5G implementation. So thank you, the panelists, for your very engaging discussion. And thank you, audience, for hearing this, and we hope that it will be useful. So good day and good night, depending on where you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.